Now I want to talk about energy, as I mentioned at the top of the program. And I couldn't believe the Prime Minister today when he said, I showed you this earlier, what he said about electricity prices today.
Cost of living relief is our #1 policy, and that's why as well our energy policy is aimed fairly and squarely at support for the cheapest form of new energy. We know that's renewables.
Really? Are Labor and Albanese really going to go to the next election again making an electoral pitch that they can deliver lower power prices? I took it up with the Shadow Energy Minister, Ted O'Brien.
We've heard it all before, Chris. We've heard it all before. His word is his bond. Australians, you're going to receive a $275 reduction in your power bills. Vote Labor, vote Labor. We heard it all. They've already sold that one. They've already failed on that one. I cannot find one person in my electorate who believes that Anthony Albanese is actually going to deliver on his promise of a $275 reduction in household power bills. Now, if he really wants to take to the election, the next election, another false promise, sure thing. Bring it on, Albo, because nobody believes you, mate. You've let them down. You have let them down. Nobody trusts you on electricity. Everybody knows it's only going to get worse under Labor. So that's my response to it, Chris.
Yeah, not a bad response. It is pretty audacious after the $275 promise and power prices going in the other direction to try the same argument yet again. But we will see. There's lots to play out in this debate, of course, Ted. And what we need is more detail about the coalition plans. We know you're going to go nuclear. But first of all, how are you going to fund that? What's that going to do to the cost of electricity in the medium and to long term? But also, we need to know how you're going to fill in the gap. How are you going to deliver enough affordable, reliable electricity between now and, say, the next 10 or 15 years when nuclear can come online?
Chris, it's a great question because you have to focus on the problem we need to solve. And the problem is 90% of our baseload power is going to exit the grid in 10 years under Labor. 90% of baseload power gone, blown up, demolished, never to come back. And there is Buckley's chance that Labor is going to be able to keep the lights on. That's the problem we have to solve. Now, all roads lead to the need for gas. We need to pour more gas into the market. We shouldn't be closing baseload power stations prematurely as we continue to roll out renewables. But over the medium to long term, as coal eventually does exit from the system, we need to introduce zero emissions nuclear energy. And to get to your question on costings, the way that we've been going about this is to learn from overseas. Those countries that have a balanced mix of technologies, they kick the prices down. And you need to do the calculation by putting the consumer, the household and the business at the centre to say the entire system is what we pay for in our bill. We need to keep the system costs down. And the big difference over time is going to be we will avoid an enormous rollout in network charges, poles and wires, because we'll be able to have a concentration of 24/7 baseload zero emissions power stations.
Yeah, gas is the key issue here. Obviously, we need gas to firm up renewables in the interim. We can't get rid of any gas generation. We'll probably have to put in more. But obviously, you need to explore and exploit more gas to keep the prices down domestically. And there are some big lessons being learned overseas at the moment. We know that Jacinda Ardern, in a country that really doesn't use a hell of a lot of gas to generate electricity, something less than 20%, but even there, when they banned gas exploration, they've found themselves caught short. They've had blackouts at times because they haven't had enough gas generation, and now they're overturning that ban.
You're right, Chris, and all we do need to do is look at other countries. We only need to look over the ditch to see what's happening in New Zealand. We need to learn the lessons from those countries that have been struggling and those countries that are doing well. But the lessons always come back to be the same. You need to have a balanced mix. You need to have base load 24/7 power in there, and you need to have gas. I mean, gas has that extraordinary ability to ramp up, ramp down, to accommodate and complement renewables. But if you want to take an all eggs in one basket approach, well, the lights go out. And the operator here in Australia is warning lights could go out here as soon as next summer. Why? We're closing those baseload power stations early, and Labor is suffocating gas, and they've totally stalled their renewables rollout. So you end up not having enough energy. So you turn on the lights and the lights won't turn on. This is what we are facing in our future, which is why, from the coalition's perspective, we are absolutely determined to call Labor out for their failures as we comprehensively put together our policy that we'll present to the Australian people in due course.
Well, it looks like the UK might run into trouble too, because Keir Starmer, the Labor opposition leader, likely to be the next Prime Minister, he's talking about banning gas exploration in the North Sea as well. At least they've got nuclear and a few transmission lines into Europe, but they could run into strife doing that as well.
I don't know enough about what he is saying, but I am concerned if the UK is going to go down a similar path and not learn lessons from other countries. But you're right, at least the UK seem to have bipartisanship when it comes to the importance of zero emissions nuclear energy. You need to make sure you've got that baseload power there. But again, gas is key, Chris. Now, a lot of people think, oh, well, you know, that's not politically trendy to talk about gas. Well, I tell you what's not trendy is the lights going out. Australians right now are on their knees because of the power bills. They can't pay the bills right now. And so learn the lessons from overseas. That balanced mix is absolutely critical. For Australia, that means we need more gas to firm up renewables. And over time, we need to have zero emissions nuclear coming into the grid.